counsel stated that you were not interested in paroling and that he would be lost in our society. His main concern at this time is to be released to a general population setting in order to program.
Makes sense to me.
That's a good statement if it's yours. It doesn't sound like you.
Well,
was that your statement?
Yeah, basically I said that to that broad, yeah. But I might have said something else to somebody else in a different perspective. I generally say to people what they want to hear.
Hold it. What broad are you talking about?
Some caseworker woman. Named Virginia, I think her name is Virginia.
Wrong. Correctional counselor?
Yeah, who was it?
Well, they go to tell you. If you're a counselor, you should know.
Well, yeah, there's all kinds of counselors.
Talk too loud, my age
counselors. They turn over all the time. They come and go like, I can't keep track of those.
Montero.
Each one, huh?
Montero,
yeah. I think that's a woman.
It's not a broad, it's a woman.
Yeah, that's what I said, woman.
Okay, that's good enough.
Let me explain something.
I didn't ask you none yet. I just want to get the statement out of the way. Is that your statement?
Part
of it.
To that person on that level. I got other legs. Cockroach got 8 legs. Scorpion got 6.
You said that you would be lost in our society today.
Well, my position is taken.
You're safe in here with our society.
No, I got nothing to do with safety. I'm not in that position.
Right.
The position that I should be holding is taken by someone else.
All right. Let me tell you what you got here. You may have seen them yourself. You have 45 what the counselor called fearful letters. Fearful letters are opposing your parole. Is that right?
I got a bunch of them. But I think they're all from one person, aren't they?
Well, it would appear that they're written by different people at a certain time, except for a few. And it is all based on some rumor you let out of this joint that you were going to be paroled and that you would be accepting hideout face and money in the bank, and that's what you put out as a rumor. Did you do that?
Can't say for real.
Can't say for real.
No, there's a lot of rumors that go in and out of different things I've been doing. That's what's hard about this whole thing, that it puts so much pressure on me that everything I say or do gets twisted around to what people want it to mean, what they want it to have said. Mm-hmm. It hasn't really got anything to do with what it really is. It's what other people need it to be.
This appeared in an article in the paper, I know that. There it is. Charlie Manson should never return to society. It was written because the news media said that Charlie Manson masterminded through his clan the outrageous murder of Sharon Tate, According to them, they did it to put fear into the system. Now the system may be putting fear into us. Federal Witness Protection Program has planned a program to release Charlie Manson.
Yeah, they offered me a place in Valachi.
Who was they?
The FBI.
What do you got to do with the FBI? You don't have nothing to do with the FBI. Nothing.
Yes, I do. I was a barber in the federal penitentiary for 20 years.
He's a snitch?
No. That's the reason I didn't take the program. If I had been a snitch, I'd have been gone to Virginia.
There was a surge there in 1990 that almost got out of hand for you.
Well, they've come to me 2 or 3 times. They want me to work and draw profiles for new criminal types. And when that New Mexico thing jumped off, they asked for some help. I'm not really an informant type guy.
Okay, now you tell me what you want to do when you get paroled. Mom and Dad? You got a mom and dad alive yet? Sir?
I'd like to explain. I really would.
You don't have to. I'm just asking.
But I mean, I really want to. I really want to.
The question is, you have folks.
But you don't understand. Each one of you is somebody. I am nobody. I'm nothing. I'm now. I've been now all my life. My mother went to prison and left me. And everybody's lied to me. A few old men in the Second World War were honest with me, you know. The older dudes were, you know, I used to work in the hospitals. They were square, you know. I've always run a main line with the guys that were truthful and honest. And like the reason you haven't been able to kill me is you haven't been able to find me. Because every time you send somebody after me, they can't find me because I'm not really there in your minds. It's like you draw a line across the desert and I'm sitting there and you come and draw a line, you say, you can't get out of there. And I say, out of where? You say, you're locked up. I said, locked up in what? He said, well, you're locked up and we're free. And I said, oh yeah? And then you walk back and forwards and you play important with my life as if you got something that I want, you know, like you got out and I'm supposed to be in, but yet I'm everywhere and I'm out and in and I'm all around. I'm down the San Diego Zoo and I'm riding a motorcycle and I'm your children and I'm the trees and I'm the clouds.
Hold it up.
I'm crazy and you got to get another doctor. Yes, sir.
I get the point.
In other words, like you won't find no one here, man. Not
you do have some letters in your behalf. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find them here. Support letters. Sharon Quimbley, Sharon Quimbley, Cindy White. Do you know a Cindy White?
No, I know Squeaky. She's doing time. She wrote a letter to the president.
Marvin Ramon Ransom. You don't know that person?
No, I don't know.
These are your supporters now, I'm talking
Well, they are. I didn't know I had any supporters. I didn't really need any supporters, actually. I thought I was a supporter.
George Stinson, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Simpson, yeah. George, St. George, yeah, he's a good man. He's an Orthodox, religious kind of guy. He's got very good
Relative of yours?
Huh?
Is he a relative?
No, spiritually we're allied. I'm allied spiritually with a lot of things.
Okay. He wrote a 2-page letter for you. Cindy White, again, she has...
I never really applied for this or asked my friends for any support.
Well, I know that, but you do have some people out there that are interested in you.
But you realize where most of those letters come from, don't you?
I have no idea.
Ulterior motives. I think the doctor sent you one. But he sent it to you and he didn't sign his name. He sent it through Sacramento. They hoodwink their own paperwork, and then when it comes back, then he can keep me here, and then he can build a medical association with me.
I'm talking about Dr. White.
Yeah, Dr. White and Chris Dobson.
Did you want to show us something here? The pictures?
Oh, no, I had some pictures here. No, these are just... I'm working on a zoo project for the ecology. I got frogs, and I got hawks, and turtles, lizards, and I'm working on the backside of this game, trying to get CC camps. We tried to start CC camps when I was in Folsom with Governor Brown. That's when Squeaky and Red and Blue and Gold was out. That's when we were running colors out of it.
Okay, one last thing I have. Somewhere I read that you were getting $500 for an autographed picture of you on the outside. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How's that done?
Well, you see, I live in the underworld. You live in the overworld. I do a lot of things underworld that you guys don't see. I made about 75 albums in Vacaville. And I bootlegged about 3 times more music than the Beatles put out.
Music?
Yeah. I had the surfboard, the Beach Boys, but I didn't sell it. Because every time I would go to the music, they'd want to change the music. So rather than change the music, I went into the subculture with it. I got an old nuclear submarine that I had from the Navy when I was Section 8 in Leavenworth, Kansas, with Brother Dynamite and the Mafia coming off of Frankie Costello in the horseshoe pits in Pennsylvania in 1952. Mm-hmm. In other words, like, I'm an awful big fella. I'm really big. I got a great big body because my body's underground.
Tell me about the albums.
This music about ecology, the air, aqua.
The pictures, autograph pictures were on albums. What you saying?
No, that's just a backlash of the younger generations. Like,
oh, you got me mixed up now.
You remember the old movie where the Pied Piper, they said you play all the rats into the river and that they would pay you, and then the people never paid the Pied Piper, so they always kept losing their children? Well, you've lost 6 generations of children to me because you won't pay me what you owe me. Because I didn't break no law. I didn't kill nobody. I didn't tell nobody to get killed. Okay. I didn't get no trial.
Okay, Mr.
Yeah, we don't want to hear
That's
that.
It.
See?
I don't have
we don't want to mix anything up with the truth.
We're back to me. I'm the chairman.
I'm all done.
Okay? And this is time for questions by any one of the panel members and the district attorney. I have a couple of questions. Do you feel any responsibility for the murders?
Sure.
Okay. Could you elaborate briefly?
I influenced a lot of people unbeknownst to my own understanding of it. I didn't understand the fears of people outside. I didn't understand the insecurities of people outside. I didn't understand people outside. And a lot of things that I said and did affected a lot of people in a lot of different directions. It wasn't intentional, and it wasn't with malice or forethought.
Okay, you answered it. Do you have remorse, Mr. Manson? Do you feel any remorse for the victims whatsoever?
Now, we reach an impasse here, man. We're in pawn 4, bishop 4 to 7. Let's see. How do I finesse that? You say in your minds that I'm guilty of everything that you've got on paper. So therefore, it would run logic that I would need to have remorse for what you think is reality. And if that be true, then all the ocean's contents, if it were my tears, there would not be enough to express the remorse I have for the sadness of that world that you people live in. Okay. But I don't have, on the other side of that, I ask you back the same thing. You know, you've been using me ever since I was 10 years old. He used to beat me with leather straps, you know. It's like, does anyone have any remorse that I've spent 23 years in a solitary cell, and even on Devil's Island, you didn't keep anyone over 5 years. You broke every record that they've ever set on the planet Earth. You only kept Christ on the cross 3 days.
Mr. Manson, I think you answered the question. Do you still have a family? Per se, the type of the family you had at the time of the crimes. Do you still have a family?
Family.
Uh-huh.
That's another one of the district attorneys. See, when they set that case into the paperwork to make it real, they had to catch little words so they could turn all that in and make it into a reality. Hippie cult leader is a word that they used. Leader, family.
Well, I believe I read in the reports where you yourself mentioned your family. And that's the type of family
you keep driving
about.
that on me, and then I have to refer to what's already on me.
My simple question is, do you still have a family as existed at that particular time?
I can't answer that in just a but. You know, it would take more time than you want to listen to me.
Well, yes or no? You either have a family.
Well, yes or no, but I got to plus the
All right. All right,
yes,
now-
no, or bloopy, or dala, or ribbit, like
Okay.
you are stuck in yes and no. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, all right.
Mr. Brown, do you have any further questions?
I have no further questions.
Mr. Cedel? All right. Mr. Kay, we're going to go to questions by the district attorney on something that has not been covered, anything that has not been covered, or something that he would like to emphasize. He will pose the questions to the panel, and when you answer the questions, Mr. Manson, would you answer the panel, please?
Sure.
Okay? Go ahead, Mr. Kay. Do you have any
And
questions?
if we get to do this back the other way?
No.
Oh, yeah.
One way.
Now, what do
One
all
way.
you people think about that? Yeah. We at fair play, huh?
Now, let's
Yeah.
pay
Don't look at
attention.
the camera, look at the
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know.
Mr.
Yeah, I
Kay.
know the man when I see him.
Thank you. I think the interesting thing for the board to do here is to question Mr. Manson about the 9th murder he was convicted of. He doesn't mind talking about the Tate LaBianca murders and the Hinman murder because he's never accepted the law of conspiracy and aiding and abetting in California. And he always thought that if he didn't physically do the murder himself, that he wouldn't be guilty. His followers would be guilty, but he didn't really care about that. But the one murder that he doesn't like to talk about, because the evidence came out in court that he personally stabbed Shorty Shea to death. He stabbed him, Bruce Davis stabbed him, Tex Watson
Excuse me,
stabbed
okay.
him. Yes.
This is time for questions. Do you have
Yes.
any questions?
Yes, that's the question. I would like you to ask Mr.
Okay.
Manson what he did to Shorty Shea and how Shorty Shea died.
Okay, you heard the question, Mr. Manson. Would you answer, face me and the panel and answer it, please?
Shorty Shea was not short. He was a great big guy, and he was very tough. He had everybody bullied, and he had everybody buffaloed. And there was a whole bunch of guys around. And he was pushing on Steve, and he was pushing on someone else, and I moved in, and I said, if you go into combat with someone, you don't hesitate. And I'm going to show you kids how to do this one time, and then don't invoke me to no violence anymore. And I moved on Shorty, and I put him in a situation where he couldn't move. And then I said, now can you understand what I'm saying to you? And he said, yeah. And I stepped up on the highway and hitchhiked a ride. And about 3 or 4 minutes later, someone stabbed him, and he was stabbed to death, and he was killed. Now, wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Anybody that knows anything about combat knows that when you go into a combat situation and you're on a line with something, that line can mean your life or your death. If you're on the line of life and death and you're gone and you're up on another line, that other reality is a completely different reality. It hasn't got anything to do with the other side of that line. I was on that side of the line, and it was a violent situation, and I did deal with it, and I put it into where it was. Let me say this, and there's only one way I can explain it. A duke in the joint is a guy that can fight with his fist. The count. Wait a minute. Let me explain this. This will explain it. The count is somebody who don't fight with his fist. He fights with his mind. He sits up on top of the count. When the count is clear, he runs the radio. And the duke does all the physical things, like the first cop does his level, then the sergeant.
Mr. Manson, just a second.
I can't explain it to you, man.
Wait a minute.
It don't have a yes or no.
Did you kill Shorty Shea?
No, I didn't have.
You didn't personally kill Shorty Shea?
Not personally, no.
Did you order him to be killed?
No, it was a fight, man. It was a.
Did you order him to be
No,
killed?
no,
All right.
no.
Another question, please.
All right, the last question, because I don't want to take up a lot of the board's time, but I'd like the board to ask Mr. Manson whether on the night of the Tate murders at the Tate house, after the murders were committed, did he go to the residence to see what had been done? And if so, what did he do when he was there?
You heard the question, Mr. Manson. Answer it.
I had a traffic ticket in San Diego, but ask him why the district attorney moved the highway patrolman to the East Coast along with the traffic ticket.
Mr. Manson,
Yeah.
did you go to the residence
No.
after the murders?
No. And let me explain that to the board. The reason they want to say that is because they should have let me out of here 3 years ago. Because if I'm not on any scene of the crime, you can only keep me 18 years, and you've already had me 23. So I could sue you for Hearst Castle, probably.
Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Are there any
Check.
other questions you
No.
have, Mr. Kay? Thank you.
Mate.
Now, this time we're going to have closing statements. First by the district attorney, and then you'll have the opportunity for the final closing statement before we recess. Mr. Kay.
Thank you very much. Penal Code Section 3041.5 B2 subsection C empowers the board to deny a life prisoner a new parole hearing for 5 years if you find three things. 1, that the prisoner is unsuitable for parole. 2, that he has been convicted of more than 2 murders. And 3, it would not be likely that he would be suitable for parole during the period of 5-year denial. Charles Manson, through his actions in directing the murders of 9 innocent people, plus the attitudes and actions that he has shown while in prison for those murders, by those actions and attitudes, he has demonstrated unquestionably that he is deserving of a unanimous finding of unsuitability by the board and the maximum 5-year denial. Charles Manson attained his status as America's most famous and feared criminal by his powerful ability to control his followers, and from July 25th, 1969 through and including August 28th, 1969, lead them on a month-long murderous rampage. That murderous rampage started at Gary Hinman's residence on July 25th. Mr. Hinman was not killed until the 27th, but he was tortured over a 3-day period. And then went to the Tate house where Sharon Tate, Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, Wojtek Rakowski, and Stephen Parent were killed on August 9th. Then on August 10th, Lino and Rosemary LaBianca. And on August 28th, Donald Shea. And I should repeat that the evidence was clear in his trial that Mr. Manson did stab Mr. Shea. The first 3 murders involving 8 victims were all tied into Mr. Manson's desire to foment or take advantage of a black-white race war. The murder of Shorty Shea was caused by Mr. Manson wanting to get revenge against him. The enormity and cruelty of these murders almost defies belief. The motive for the Tate and LaBianca murders is enough in and of itself for the board to deny Mr. Manson parole and Mr. Watson and the 3 girls parole forever. Helter Skelter. What was this and how did it start? Well, it started by Manson, who was the guru on LSD trips, leading his family members through the trips. They would listen to the Beatles' White Album. And Mr. Manson and the others, and it wasn't just Mr. Manson alone because they would kind of feed on each other. And they determined listening to the White Album with songs like Helter Skelter, Revolution 9, Blackbird, Piggies, Sexy Sadie, back in the USSR, that the Beatles were the prophets talked about in Revelations 9 and 10 of the Bible. Mr. Manson, I heard, even is still quoting the Bible. He could quote the Bible very well, but twist it to mean what he wanted it to mean. Mr. Manson felt that there was going to be this black-white revolution, and the family was going to be the beneficiaries because the blacks were going to kill all of the whites except for Manson and the family. And Manson and the family were going to escape to the bottomless pit, talked about in Revelations 9 and 10 of the Bible. And they would live in this bottomless pit for 50 to 100 years in miniaturized form. And then they would have grown to the size of 144,000, the 12 tribes of Israel. And at the end of this 50 to 100 year period, Manson and the family would come out of the bottomless pit, and there would only be blacks left. Black president, black senators, black congressmen. But Manson, who is a real racist, thought that blacks were too stupid to maintain power. And as soon as he and the family came out of the bottomless pit, the blacks would rush up to him and turn over all power. Now, it was never clear whether he was going to rule the world, but at least he was going to rule the United States. Now, I know this sounds bizarre, but the problem is that Manson and his followers believed in this motive enough to kill innocent people. At the trial, we showed that Manson was so serious about this that he went to a sporting goods store in Santa Monica and bought expensive golden rope that he was going to lower himself into the bottomless pit. He rented scuba equipment because he thought the entrance to the bottomless pit was under some underground river in Death Valley, and he was looking for the entrance. He brought topographical maps because he felt that that he and the family were going to have to fight their way out of L.A. From the Spahn Ranch to Death Valley to get to the bottomless pit. He got a alliance with the Straight Satan's motorcycle gang in Venice that they were going to help protect him and lead him to the bottomless pit. He had one of the Straight Satan's members, Danny DiCarlo, who ran a gun room out in the Spahn Ranch where he had machine guns and other armaments, and DiCarlo would pack bullets. Now, there are 4 separate occasions of murder here. The first occasion of murder, the Hinman murder, was tied into Manson preparing for war. He needed money because he was buying armaments. He was buying dune buggies. He had his own dune buggy. He had a machine gun mounted on the dune buggy, and he had a sheath for his sword that he kept on the side. Well, he met Gary Hinman, who was a rock musician. He met him at Dennis Wilson's house, the same place he met Tex Watson. Dennis Wilson was the drummer for the Beach Boys. Manson thought that Hinman had come into an inheritance, and he wanted his money and his property, and he wanted Hinman to join the family. So he sent Beausoleil, Adkins, and Bruner to Hinman's house to get the property. Hinman was not interested in doing this. He hadn't come into an inheritance, and he didn't want to join the family. When he wasn't cooperating, Beausoleil called first Bruce Davis, and I know there's been some misconception here about who was Manson's chief lieutenant. Make no mistake about it, Bruce Davis was Manson's chief lieutenant, not Tex Watson. Tex Watson was certainly the major killer here, but when Manson was not at the ranch in charge, Bruce Davis was the one in charge. When Manson wanted somebody to study Scientology more, because that's how he used that a lot to control people, to get into their minds, he sent Bruce Davis to London to the Scientology headquarters to study Scientology. Anyway, Manson and Davis then went the second day to Hinman's house and tried to force him to turn over his property, and when he wouldn't cooperate, Manson sliced his ear off with Davis holding a gun on him. And then they left and let Beausoleil know, get the property or else, and of course it turned into or else, with Beausoleil killing him the third day, and Adkins holding a pillow over his nose and his mouth so he couldn't breathe while he was dying from the stab wounds. Now, Manson always felt that the blacks were going to start the revolution, and when they didn't, he was very impatient. And finally, on the evening of August 8th, he told his family members, the only thing Blackie knows what to do is what Whitey shows him, and that's a quote. And so we're going to have to show Blackie how to do it. Now is the time for Helter Skelter. And so he told Watson, Adkins, Krenwinkel, and Kasabian to go to the residence. Now, the motive for the murders, make no doubt about it, was Helter Skelter, but Manson had an ulterior motive. He was very mad at the prior residents of the Tate house. He had been there before. He knew the layout. He and Watson had both been to a party there. But he was very mad at Terry Melcher, Doris Day's son, and his girlfriend, Candace Bergen, because Manson wanted a recording contract for Melcher, and Melcher auditioned him and wouldn't give him the contract. So the reason that this particular residence was picked out was because Manson wanted to send a message to Melcher and Bergen that there but for the grace of God go you. And he knew that they moved out. He knew that somebody else lived there at the time. He didn't know who they were. He didn't know any of these people at the residence. He knew that somebody famous lived there. And he told his followers that he wanted some gruesome murders. He even talked at one point about gouging eyeballs out and smashing them against the wall. And when they left the ranch, he told the girls, he said, do what Watson tells you to do, because he knows the layout of the place, and leave a sign, something witchy. Well, they followed his instructions, because the victims at the Tate house suffered 102 stab wounds. Sharon Tate, who was 8.5 months pregnant, was hung while she was still alive. And I should tell you that Watson took a long rope in there because Watson and Manson both knew that the living room had high beam ceilings that you could throw a rope over and hang somebody. So that was planned from the very beginning. Susan Adkins wrote in Sharon Tate's blood on the front door, pig, the letters P-I-G. Now, this wasn't good enough for Mr. Manson.
Excuse me,
yes.
Okay. We're retrying the case is actually what you're doing. we should be talking about suitability
Right.
for parole. We
Yes.
know he killed the people, and we accept that
Right.
the findings of the court. So I would like you to speak to suitability, if you would, please.
I will. I'm just about finished this area, but this goes to suitability, what he did in the life crimes. That's a part of it. That's a part of your hearing, and I just don't want people to forget what he did, what he's responsible for. I'm not going blow by blow like I would in the Watson hearing and in Van Houten. I mean, I would do that blow by blow there. I'm not doing it here, but I'm telling about his directions. And on the La Biancas, he met in the bunkhouse on the ranch, and he scolded the people who were there at the Tate murder and told them that they'd been too messy, and that he was going to show them how to do it this night. And so they went. He led them on a 4-hour trip around the county of Los Angeles, at one point even stopping at a congregational church in South Pasadena and knocking on the door, trying to find the minister so that he could kill the minister and hang the minister upside down to the cross in front of the church. Now, in the LaBianca house, he went in by himself, got the drop on Mr. and Mrs. LaBianca with a gun, tied them up, tied their hands, assured them that they were going to be okay, that it was only a robbery. He took one thing from the house when he went outside. He took Mrs. LaBianca's wallet. And the reason that he did this, because he had it later planted in what he felt was a black area, because he wanted a black person to find the wallet and to use the credit cards, Mrs. LaBianca's credit cards, so that the blacks would get blamed for these murders, and that would start the revolution. On the Shea murder, Shea was a ranch hand at Spahn Ranch and knew that Manson and the family were up to no good, but he knew that Mr. Spahn, who was 80 years old, was too old to do anything about kicking Manson off, and so Mr. Shea conspired with a neighboring rancher to kick Manson off the ranch. That and the fact that Mr. Shea, who was white, was married to a black woman, when Manson just couldn't understand that. For those two reasons, he decided to take care of Mr. Shea. Now, 6 of the 9 victims who were murdered in the supposed sanctity of their own homes, and 7 were complete strangers. Now, what has Mr. Manson learned in the almost 23 years that he has been in prison for these murders? I thought Mr. Brown really hit the nail on the head here. In my estimation, Mr. Manson has learned nothing other than physically aging, and Mr. Manson's going to be 58 this year. Mr. Manson is exactly the same person he was when he was arrested at Barker Ranch in Death Valley on October 12, 1969. He has no respect for authority. He has no respect for society or desire to be part of it. And he has no remorse for directing the murder of any of these 9 victims. His adjustment in prison has been horrible. His record is replete with assaulting prison guards and staff, including punching them, spitting in their face, throwing hot coffee. And I thought that Mr. Manson's talk here about spitting on the guard, you would think, listening to him, that this was some man that he spit on. It was a woman that he spit in her face. Mr. Manson doesn't like women. I think that's pretty clear. His record's also replete with threatening staff and guards, either that he's going to kill him or he's going to have somebody else kill him. His record also has in it possession of contraband. He had LSD in his cell in Vacaville and tried to smuggle in a hacksaw blade when he was transferred to San Quentin. And he was caught with escape plans when he was in Vacaville. Now, Mr. Brown said that he had 60 CDC 115s. I counted 57, but that's pretty close. But one of the important things is that he has 9 since his last hearing. And at the last hearing, the board directed him that one of the things they wanted to see him do was to be disciplinary free. And yet, what has he done? He's picked up 9 CDC 115s, the same type of violations that he's had since he's been in prison. He hasn't changed one iota. What else has he done? He refused to cooperate with the scheduled psychological evaluation, and he refused to appear at his 1982 and 89 parole hearing. I think that we have to face the fact that based on Mr. Manson's words and actions, that he's really not serious about being paroled. In 1981, he said that he did want to be paroled, but since he hated people, he wanted to be paroled to Death Valley so that he could live with his friends, the spiders and the snakes, or in the alternative, be paroled to space. Here, this time, he told Correctional Counselor Montero. Yes.
Change the statement.
Sure.
This is tape number 3. Oops, wrong side. This is tape number 3 in the hearing for Charles Manson, 4/21/92, California State Prison, Carpenter procedure.
This year in the board report, he told Correctional Counselor Montero, and I'd like to say about that this board report by Correctional Counselor Montero, this is the 44th parole hearing I've been to for Manson and Watson, Adkins, Van Houten, and Krenwinkel, and this is the best board report I've ever read. This is a crackerjack board report. Anyway, he told Correctional Counselor Montero that, quote, he has no plans for the future, that he was not interested in paroling, and that he would be lost in our society. Well, I can tell Mr. Manson that our society feels the same way about him. We don't want him back. The board has received over the years over 352,000 cards, letters, petitions signed by individuals, all directed and sent to the board in Sacramento, asking you members of the board not to parole Mr. Manson or the other 4 defendants convicted of the Tate LaBianca murders. Charles Manson told his followers that Adolf Hitler was his hero, and he tried to emulate him. We can see even today he still has a swastika on his forehead. Can we ever risk setting a man like Charles Manson free in society, a man who, in essence, tried to destroy our society? I think not. I would respectfully ask the board to find Mr. Manson unsuitable for parole and to give him the maximum 5-year denial. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. Mr. Manson, would you speak to your suitability for parole, please?
Is there any way that we could take a recess where I could use the restroom?
Certainly. We'll recess at this time.
Switch it back.
The time is now 7 hours. Everybody can remain in the room right now. Okay, we're on tape here? Yes. Okay. We reconvened the panel hearing on Charles Manson after a brief break as requested by the prisoner. All participants are present now who were present prior to the recess. The time is 15 hours. Go ahead, Mr. Manson, with your closing statement regarding suitability.
You're gonna limit me to suitability?
I'll let you ramble a little bit, but I'd like you to stick to
Is that
suitability.
what you call it, rambling?
Well, no, I didn't mean it that way. I will allow you to talk about what you would like to talk about, as long as you don't stray too far from suitability, please.
As long as I don't say anything, it's okay if I talk.
No, I'm allowing you to say it. Talk.
You see 9 dead people. That's not even a tip of it. That just set one little blaze to this thing that you call Helter Skelter that you created for Rambo's movies, so all the Italians can move over from New York and move into district attorney's office, and this Anglo-Christian girl don't seem to know which whorehouse has got the red light on it. The law, in my perspective, is a MAC, like there's a court on the inside, like inmate court. We've always held a court in the inner sanctum of prison. Peace officers are servants to the will of everyone. The Bible, the church has a chapel, and a preacher in it. We abide by the rules and regulations. It goes into the courtroom to do the same. If I abide by the rules and regulations, I can walk in harmony with God. If I don't abide by the rules and regulations, sooner or later, I have to fall short and go through a lot of changes. It's best you look into my mind now while you got a chance while I'm still here. I know a lot about law. I know the judge's bench. I know crime and school and doctors and reports, and I know bad and good and money and economy and gambling and prostitution. I see the world from the underworld up. So I go out in the desert when I get out in 54, and I see birds and I see bees and bugs and trees, and then I get locked up. And when I get back out again, all these bugs and birds and trees are gone. There's shopping malls where the lake used to be. You're using up all the water. And the creeks is over there where the freeway is. And you can't swim there anymore. There's no more fish there. And civilization has moved out and it's choking all the life off the earth. So it's not my affair. I just got out of jail. I don't know that much about it. A couple old men I met in Mexico City, we used to deal mushrooms and talk about the planet and the earth and the balance of the earth. And all these kids come around me and I'm playing music and they ask me, how do I know these things and where does these things come from? And I said, well, the only thing I know is what I learned in jail, man. You know, like my brother's in jail. I call him my brother, you know. My brother's like, he's God, you know, he lives in jail, you know. And that's all I know is what I've done, you know. I say, but I tell you them, if you don't stop cutting them trees down, there's going to be nothing of you left, you know. And a lot of the kids never met anybody that told them the truth. They never had anybody that was truthful to them, you know. They never had anybody that wouldn't lie or snake on them or play old fake games. So all I did was I was honest with a bunch of kids, and they would just come to me and say, we ain't got no place to stay. And I said, well, I ain't got no place to stay either. And they say, well, can we stay with you? I said, can you stay with me? They'd say, well, we want to be a family. I said, don't put no tags on my toes, man. Don't give them people nothing to identify with that they can come back and put me back in the penitentiary with. I know what conspiracy is. I got an intelligence. I'm not that stupid. I can understand that bugs communicate. I can understand that trees can hear you. I understand that there are other life forms on this planet besides myself, you know. And conspiracy, I understand the law. And a lot of the things that people have said in that court is only to suit the game that they're playing. Whether I'm suitable for this planet Earth or not probably will outlast what the court's doing for money, because my principal is not locked up in a bank and my soul is not locked up in a government and my life is not locked up in a penitentiary. You got my body in a cell, but that's only a day, you know. That don't count for no eternity. I'm walking in forever, man. And this little game that we're playing here on this level, there is more things that are important to you than my parole, and there's a whole lot more important to me than my parole. If you want to give me a parole, I might consider taking that and letting you live in my world. If you deny my parole, you go off in your world. Don't come back in mine. And if I can get some trees going over here in CC camp, and I can work with these guys in the uniform, and I can work and do a job in here like I don't get paid for the job that I do in here, but if I'm honest with what I do in here, maybe the preacher will let me out and hoe in the garden again. And I was helping the kids over there in the visitor room in Vacaville. And then people wanted to use me again and play some more politics and tell some more lies because they wanted to bring Bingham back from France because he's responsible for killing 6 people over there when San Quentin came down from death row and Jackson got killed. But we'll cover that up. We won't look at that because he's got the money to get away with things like that. So we got the juvenile running wild, and we're saying, where does the juvenile come from, and where does he get his principle from? The old winos that live in the county jail or the retired veterans that were outcast. And we dig into their hearts and we see how real they are and how comes they got up on a railroad train because they couldn't even get the dog in the house because she wouldn't let them do anything except what the Queen of England said. And she's fighting against Spain, and that's still going in the languages. And it's so abstract that someone has to carry insanity. Someone's got to be insane. Someone's got to be the bad guy. How can we be good guys? There's another letter in there that you didn't read about how Manson was burned up and how people threw fire on him. They should have killed him. They didn't tell you that they tried to kill me at least 30 or 40 times, that they haven't been able to kill me because you ain't got nobody bad enough to kill me. Not unhandcuffed. No 2 or 3 of you. Because I'm right with my God, and I'm right with myself, And I didn't break the law. I didn't break God's law, and I didn't break man's law. What you're doing in the political arena with Hollywood to make your Rambo movies with my machine gun, the machine gun was a World War II relic. It would only shoot one bullet at a time. It wouldn't even go pop, pop, pop because it was all worn out. It was so old. But I liked it because I liked World War I, because that was my father. I didn't worship Hitler any more than I liked MacArthur. MacArthur and Truman was the same father figure to me, like the kids look up to Vietnam veterans as their father figure. So I looked up to my grandfather in the First World War and my father in the Second World War. And wherever there is a man, I am there also. In the truth, I walk with all men. I'm bad. I'm as bad as I gotta be when it comes down. I deal. And I can deal from the bottom just as easy as I can deal from the top. And I cheat if it comes to where I need to cheat. And I steal if I need to steal. If I'm too hungry and I can't feel it any other way, I'll do whatever I can do to survive, just like I've always done. And if I have to pick up steel and roll it down and do whatever I got to do, that's what I got to do, and that's what I'll do. I seen this, and this is a reality. The air in LA Basin is dying. Where there used to be bees, the bees can't live. Where there used to be butterflies, the butterflies can't fly. I said to Blue, I said, girl, I'm going to call you Blue. I said, you see that sky? I said, that sky's dying. If we don't do something about that sky, nobody cares. If you don't care, there's going to be no life left on this planet. I said, you see that water over there? And I said, you're dumping tons of junk in that water. So you're blue for the sky and the water. And I set those people's minds, like he said. I set their minds back on the track with Jesus on a rebirth movement. I set it with a guy called Frank Costello in Horseshoe Pits. I said it with the Pope in the Vatican. I said it with the mafia and the gangsters. I said it with every man I'd ever met in my life, all the way back to Creepy Carpus when he did the Mar Barker gang with J. Edgar Hoover in the FBI. Because wherever there's been a man walking in the underworld, from Cook County Jail in Chicago to the super chief that rides to L.A., from Leavenworth, Kansas to Big Top of Section 8, the Navy down in the Coast Guard, wherever there's one walking, I've been walking there with it.
Mr. Manson, talk about suitability, please.
I don't know what else I could be if I couldn't be suitable to be your leader. I ain't nothing.
All right.
I'm your president at least 3 times. That's through Reagan up through the mine. Mm-hmm. Older was only his appointee, and he only got there because he was riding on me. That was my horse. That was my divorce court to come back from Nixon. And the only reason J.R. got up out of Texas is because I went across Africa with 2 Mau Mau from
Mr. Manson,
in 1960.
Mr. Manson, excuse me. Would you please talk as to why you should be paroled? If you have nothing to say in that area, then we're going to recess to deliberate.
Okay.
I'm going to call on into it.
If I'm not paroled,
okay,
and I don't get a chance to get back up on top of this dream, you're going to lose all your money. Your farms ain't going to produce. You're going to win, helter skelter. You're going to win your reality. You're going to get everything that you want right from the pages of that court. That's going to be your reality, and you're coming. You're growing up, and you're going to be there just like you want him to be there. That's where he's coming, because that's what you're making for yourself.
All right, we're going to recess for deliberation. We'll call you back after we make a decision. The time is now 15:25 hours. Prisoner leave, please.
I don't need those papers. Give them to me.